Welcome Internet to Psychologist Casual Review, and today I wanted to review a book that I found very interesting, The Expulsion of the Other by Byung-Chul Han. I hope I said his name correctly. So what I found so interesting in this book was basically it's a mix between psychology, mainly psychodynamic theories like Freud and Lacan's, sociology throughout the analysis of society, and philosophy, obviously, through the works of Martin Heidegger. So it's a very contemporary book as it talks about social media, its effects on us, on society, on everyone basically, and how our ways of communication have changed since fundamentally. So there's a lot of very interesting ideas in this relatively short book, but I wanted to talk about a couple of them that I found very interesting. So the first is that basically for Byung-Chul Han, the other, when he uses it, I think he uses it in a psychoanalytic way of saying it, meaning what is different from ourselves, what is fundamentally something that we cannot assimilate. It's just the other person as a subject, as an object, an other human being in the fullness. Well, his idea is that basically the other and his essential role in the constitution of who we are is gone. It's been replaced by what he called the terror of the same. What does it mean? Well, he says that basically throughout social media and through the whole dynamics of our modern world, we never meet an alternative. We only meet reflections of oneself through the media, echo chambers in a way in which nothing is going to be different. Everyone is going to think the same, believe the same, and that what the other used to bring, meaning mainly his negativity, which seems strange but is very interesting, that basically throughout his negativity he's going to put in a form limits, and those limits are going to be come like a frame in which we develop. Well, according to him, this whole process is over, because now we only create ourselves through our people that think the same, that believe the same sins, and this is going to create a limitless world in which everything is reverberated, like an echo that goes on and on and on. He doesn't use that image, but that's the one I built when he was talking about it. That's what came into my mind. This eternally lasting sameness that's just also incredibly violent, because you can never really stray away from the sameness. The sameness always catches you, brings you back. There is no alternative, no limit to the sameness. You have to be the same all the time, always, and you have to be the same within your whole social compound. And he says that that's incredibly violent. It's of a violence that we don't even realize because we're so into it. We lose ourselves through social media, through this allure of a mirror. But that's something that's incredibly jeopardizing for him. Our whole identity is being lost within the similarities. And what could save us, or at least help us differentiate, make us more autonomous, more, in a way, more of a subject, is how the other and his otherness can also help ourselves define who we are. It's not just a bad thing to be different, it's essential. And that I found that very interesting. And he also goes into the whole process of genuineness and how our society shows pseudo-genuineness. It's not about being true to oneself fundamentally. It's even more perverse than that. For him, the whole aspect of our world, contemporary world, is that you have to show genuineness, but only as it serves you, only as you can exploit it. You exploit your genuineness, turn it into a story. Say, oh yes, I've struggled, but now I have overcome the struggle. I am better now than ever before. I've suffered, but it was for a reason. And they seem okay on the surface, and that's what he explains. But in a way, this is an alienation to our true selves, because not every suffering, not every sadness can be tamed to make it a story. not everything should be commercialized or exploited. And that's what he says. It's an ultimate violence, according to Byung-Chul Han, that we are basically doing to ourselves. We're exploiting who we are. Our genuineness is just being ripped apart and exploited, used for our monetary gain, for our social status, that basically the genuineness is fake, it's narcissistic in what he says of it, and that basically we are who basically we want to show, and that show becomes what we are, and the genuineness is broken. For him, what we have to go back to is a true genuineness that he calls design. And what is design? It's not just the fact of showing something true, it's being something true, something we are to ourselves, something that's us, and at the most fundamental core level of our experience to the world, and not that show kind of genuineness that, according to him, means nothing really, that is basically empty, as would be an empty balloon, that it's only in the surface, at the surface level. And that's something that I find very true. Nowadays, everything is basically how one can develop oneself, how one shows how he has overcome the struggles. It's almost to the point of caricature where the people will basically be arrogant and virtually say that they've overcome the human condition, which is completely ludicrous, but that's where we're at a point where all your problems can be solved, should be solved. And I'm going to leverage my genuineness to help you solve your problems. But doing that is a fundamental lie, and he points it out, and I completely agree with him that this is a lie. It is a manipulation, both of other people, but also of oneself. That it's a perversion of, let's say, psychoanalytic ideals. And I think that that's very, very true, what he points out, that it is a perversion of basically something true. It has not become true, it has become fake. Truth has become fake, and I found that incredibly interesting. And he also points out that in that phenomenon is also linked to capitalism, to neoliberalism, that we are to exploit as we destroy, we are to destroy as we exploit. And he does link it up to Freud's Beyond the Pleasure Principle, which is a fundamental text in which Freud introduces the notion of death drive, meaning basically there is a push within the organism to not live, as one would think, but to die and to cease to be, to become inanimate again. And that's what he points out, is that our whole capitalistic neoliberal system is at this point where it's basically urging to stop, and it's pushing so far that it's going to cause our destruction. And we are in that. We are bound by the death drive in the here and now of our society, where climatic change, global warming, all of those things are denied. Even the resources of our world are denied because we are just engulfed in the death drive, in that fundamental force. And of course, a lot of people find it distasteful to talk about the death drive, but I think it's a very, very important aspect. And the fact that he brings it up is essential, I feel, in the understanding of our contemporary world of fake genuineness and will to exploit and destroy. And that's something that's very, very important, I think, to understand our modern world. And there's another thing that I found very interesting, because he does not give up. He does not give in into despair. He does say that we need to regain something of the other. And through that regainness, it's through listening, through not just like holding a conversation or just like superficially listening to the beats of a conversation, but really truly listening, trying to really understand the other, to be with the other, to fundamentally, in a way, he doesn't say that, I think, but like Socrates, try and really get to the core through listening, through trying to self-reflect as the other one talks. And he says that through listening, we can really, truly achieve a reinstatement of the other and his negativity, meaning that it's not about the other being positive. It's about Java putting limits. That our system has become limitless in the worst possible sense because nothing is limitless. And yet we act as if everything was limitless. That the electricity is limitless, the internet is limitless, our world is limited. And yet we delude ourselves in believing in its illimitedness. And that's something that I found very interesting because it's true that we're at a point where basically there's two types of people that are coming to terms with the fact that things are going to change, and people that are in the business as usual. It doesn't say that like that, but that's what I got out of the book personally. And that's what I found fundamentally interesting, is that basically the turning point is going to be with the limits, with the fact of having to acknowledge the other and to go beyond the sameness and the terror and the violence that's linked to that sameness. In a way, it was a very interesting book. It's also a book that I found very easy to read, even though my trade is not in philosophy. And I think that it could work for a layman. If you're interested in ideas, in thinking about things, this is a great book, and especially because it's so modern and he gives like concrete examples of social media. So I hope you liked the review, and I'll see you in the next one.